Good evening. Welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring women-owned businesses from across the country. And now, for your host, Kimberly Macklemore.
All right, good evening and welcome to WSBI, your Resource for Success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring entrepreneurs and women-owned businesses from across the country. I am your host, Kimberly Macklemore, and welcome to another night of sharing. With us, we have Bex Bedford, voiceover, actor, producer, podcast host, YouTube content creator, public speaker, size acceptance champion, and entrepreneur. After years of vlogging as Rebecca of being an SSBBW, Bex no longer felt connected to the name. SSBBW translates to Supersized Big Beautiful Woman, an acronym that wasn't representative of her message, but felt more exclusive, focusing too much on looks, size, and gender. In 2019, Bex made the leap to change her brand from being an SSBBW to Bex Bedford. Choosing Bex, a longtime nickname, afforded Rebecca the ability to just be herself, not bound by any one notion or group, allowing her to be her full, true, authentic self. Bex uses her platform to share her philosophy, real-life methods of self-love, self-reflection, and self-acceptance. She details the steps she took from being a full-blown hermit to now a public figure. No matter what your size or issues you may be battling, Bex's story is a journey that all can find value in. Hers is a story of consequence, self-reflection, love, addiction, and evolution. So welcome to my platform, Miss Bex Bedford. Hey, Bex, how are you?
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited to be here.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited too. Most people don't know, but we were just chatting away. You guys just missed a great conversation before we actually came.
Absolutely.
I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 7 o'clock. We need to get on air. So here we are, people. Here we are. And I'm just extremely excited to talk to Bex. I mean, I love her platform, her enthusiasm. But Bex, before we dive into the interview about your business and everything you do, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit more about who Rebecca Bedford really is?
Okay. Well, as you listed my long laundry list of jobs that I do, but my real story is, how I went from this person who was really closed off from the world. I was a hermit for a good 8 years. I really hated myself. I absolutely hated myself. I hated the way I looked. I thought that I was less than a monster, so to speak. I stayed hidden away because I felt like I was an eyesore to other people. Mm-hmm. And it was a really dark time, being locked away from my family, my friends, pursuing the career that I wanted, because I thought that because I was overweight, I wasn't worthy of the things that I wanted in my life. Mm-hmm. And through, a long journey of getting to a space of figuring out who I was as a person, learning about myself, giving myself permission to have value and worth, and being able to seize opportunities despite what my size was or despite what other people may see me as, and learning my own worth, I've been able to share my story with other people and creating these platforms mm-hmm. where I share my struggles. This hasn't been an easy road. It probably will never be. Right. But my accomplishments, being able to put myself out there in a positive way. So it's really, it's crazy when I look back at it, when I think I was such an extreme at one point and for such a big part of my life. And now I'm somebody who has been able to work through that and share my story publicly with others. It's a really, it's a satisfying place to be able to help others who may be struggling with the same thing, because I think as humans, we all go through that. We always have these periods where we harp on our things that we think is wrong with us, right? Like we can't have X without Y. And we prohibit ourselves from going after what we want. And And that's why what I hope to accomplish when I share my story is that you are capable and you are worthy of doing those things now. You do not have to wait for that. So that's kind of been like my mission on my platform to share that with people.
Right. And it's a wonderful platform. And I want to ask, before we kind of, like I said, like, dive into the business side of what you do, when did you realize and when did it really come to your point in life where you said, I just hate myself. I don't like the way I look. When did it start? What age were you?
I was like 18, 19 years old. I had always been overweight. So I had always had people picking on me and I've always had, struggles throughout school. But it wasn't until I was 18 or 19, there was a moment when I went out to dinner with my sister and there was a table of college guys sitting nearby. And I sat there for a good 45 minutes listening to them make fun of me the entire time.
Good
I mean,
Lord.
It was just fat joke after fat joke after fat joke. And then when I got up to pay the bill, then the whole table just jumped up. They were hitting the table. They were laughing, high-fiving each other because then they got to see all of me, making fun of how big my butt was. And just like, it was a horrifying experience. And that experience just kind of solidified what I had already been wondering about myself. When you're a teenager and you're going through high school, you don't know who you are. You have all these conflicting things going on. You're just trying to, learn how to be an adult. And that was the catalyst for me to start over the next year or two to start shutting myself away. And once I got to I found a job that let me work third shift, where I was by myself all night. I didn't have to see anybody. I didn't have to be around anybody. And it was perfect because then I could hide away at night at my job and then I can go at home and then lock myself away in my house. And in that time, my food addiction, which probably I already had one a little bit when I was in high school, it spiraled out of control. I thought that I just thought that there was nothing that I had. I had no life. I wouldn't go see my family. I cut off all ties of all friends. Didn't have anything to do with them ever again. I just sat at home and hated who I was. I didn't wear feminine clothes. I didn't do my hair. I didn't wear makeup. I used to think, why put pearls on a pig? That's how I saw myself.
Wow.
I was somebody who was completely unworthy of anything. I mean, I was good at my job. I was third shift job. I was really good at it. And I could have gone into management. I could have, branched out and done other things, but I was so afraid to have anybody see me. And I was so convinced that until I was thin, I couldn't have the job I wanted or the career I wanted, or I couldn't date. I couldn't wear feminine clothes. I couldn't wear makeup. I couldn't do my hair. I mean, I don't think I even dyed my hair or cut my hair until I was like 28 years old.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah. It was, I wore oversized T-shirts and big, sweatpants. I mean, that was what I wore every day. I just didn't see any worth in me. And one day I was driving to work, and what started me to know that I had to change was I was running out of gas. And every gas station that I went to had people pumping gas. And I was so afraid of anybody seeing me, right? That, my car is sputtering and, I pull over on the side of the road and I'm crying and I'm hysterical and I'm having a full-blown panic attack because I'm like, this is not living. This isn't living. This is, I can't continue this way. Something has to change. And that's when I decided to put the wheels in motion to change my life. And I thought, again, I thought in order to change my life, I had to be thin. So I tried to get weight loss surgery. And my insurance turned me down upwards of 3 times because there was nothing wrong with me other than I was fat. I didn't have high blood pressure, diabetes, or anything like that. And back then it was a lot more difficult to get weight loss surgery. So finally, after they turned me down several times, then they came back and they said, hey, if you go to therapy for a year, if you see a doctor every single month for a year, and they both come to the conclusion that you need to have this, we will approve it. So I was like, yes, I will do it. Yes, I will do that. And I started therapy, and it was very apparent early on with my sessions with my therapist that I had a lot of issues that I had to work through. I definitely had a food addiction, and I was not a candidate for weight loss surgery at that time because, I mean, my food addiction was so out of control. If I had gotten weight loss surgery at that time, I probably would have hurt myself.
Right, right.
Yeah. So it was through the next 5 years after that of seeing her, and, you know, for the first year, it was 2 times a week. Which is how bad my anxiety and panic was. It took 3 years to even see myself kind of as a woman and to start allowing myself and giving myself permission to be able to dress feminine and do my hair and do my makeup and stuff like that. It took a long time of really working through my issues. And one thing that she said to me that really changed the course of my therapy and really got me back out in the world, and she probably had said it in different ways before, but I was ready to hear it at that moment. But she said that what other people think about me is none of my business. Wow. And for me at that moment, right, that really exploded in my brain because I was like, well, hold on a second. What if they make it my business?
None of my, right, exactly.
Right. What if they tell me what they think? And she goes, it's still none of your business. She goes, that's their thoughts. That's their feelings that they have to deal with. She goes, you are completely in control, and it's completely in your power on whether or not you're going to take on their beliefs and their ideology. Yeah. She goes, if they want to share that with you, it is up to you on whether if you're going to take that energy, that belief system on for yourself. Otherwise, it's none of your business. That's their stuff. And when I started repeating that in my head and really believing that, I started, going to grocery stores again. I started to, put myself out there in the world and go shopping and, visit my family. And, it took a while still for me to get the courage up enough to go into a restaurant. But I finally did. And, it was amazing I think the first time I went to a movie theater, I must have been 31 years old. And the last time I was in a movie theater when I was 17.
Good grief.
So,
wow.
Right. It was a long process.
I have got a lot of points to make here because listening to your journey, it sounds like so many other people's same journey. And the thing that interests me about it is from the beginning. I mean, we know people and young people in general, and I don't even think it's even really about age. People can just be arrogant and rude and ignorant. And because part of it is because we live in a society that tells you have to be a certain way. And when we take on that format of the world telling us, well, you have to look this way, you have to be this size, you got to wear these clothes, your hair has to be straight, you have to be everything that one man has decided this is the way you're supposed to look, and then everybody's take on that form. And so, as we grow up, we do believe that because we're told, well, you need to keep your weight down, or you need to do this, you need to do that. Yeah. And that's where the problem comes in. And so when I was listening to your story about these young people, these young men, putting you down because you look a certain way that may not be acceptable to them, or they may not like it. That's perfectly fine. But, what saddens me is that people feel they have to show off and show their ignorance, to show, that they're, they're being men, so to speak. And that's the part that drives me crazy with what we still see today in society. And then to hear the continuance of your story, that it had brought you down to your knees and then some. That's the part that hurts even more. That we as women, we're hard enough on ourselves anyway. And like you said, we all as individuals find something wrong about ourselves that we don't particularly like. And we have to learn to deal with that. We have to learn to figure out how to get over that hurdle and look at the things that we love and what is perfect about ourselves, and really at the end of the day, it's in God's eyes that he has made everybody a perfect person. We just have to learn to believe that we are perfect, right? And
Exactly.
Your epiphany of realizing that this isn't how I want to live, that to be so scared to get out of a vehicle and not pump gas. You would rather be broke on that side of the road than to have to face that reality. That's a scary thought.
It was absolutely terrifying. I mean, I had a whole system down just so I couldn't go in a grocery store. You know, back then they didn't have grocery delivery.
Right.
And I would, and my food addiction was so bad. So I didn't want any one fast food place to see me too often, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So there would be days where I wouldn't eat anything because the situation wasn't correct in order for me to go get food. Because certain people, I had seen them too often. I didn't want them to see me again, or, you know, I needed a break. You know, I had this whole system put in place in order to keep me hidden, because I just didn't think I had any worth. Mm-hmm. And I know that a lot of people probably don't have anything to the extreme that I had. Mm-hmm. But I know that a lot of people, I know my mom, my sister, they were overweight. They were never as big as I was, but they hated their bodies from the moment that I could listen and understand the words they were saying. That's all I ever heard. Right. It's how they hated their bodies. And I thought, well, I'm bigger than them.
Yeah, and it's that vicious cycle of that constantly goes through each family member and because here you've figured out that what was within you, but you know it's the family members too that need that same focus of figuring out what really is eating them and what was really the bigger problem underneath all the other things, right?
Absolutely, and it took a long time for me to even figure out who I was as a person. Mm-hmm. And I think when I started to look inside instead of outside, you know, seeking that validation and being that person of what I thought other people wanted me to be. And that's when the real changes started to happen. And that's when I really started living a full life. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm still a fat person. You know, I'm always going to have a food addiction. I'm very proud that I have it under control right now. I've been 9 months sober, as I like to call it. And I feel like I've, you know, have put things in places in my life to help me get through rough times and deal with those obstacles, because they'll always be a part of me. And I wouldn't go back and change it for anything in the world. Even the darkness and the pain that I went through and how alone I was, it made me appreciate life a lot more. It made me the person I am, and I like the person that I am. And when I really gave myself that permission to live my life out loud, I then chased down all of the opportunities that I had been missing for so long. You know, getting into voiceover acting was a big coup for me. You know, I never thought in a million years that I could do something that I loved, which was, you know, acting when I was in school and stuff. I never thought that I could actually put that to where I can make money off of it and people would hire me, because I didn't think I was good enough until I tried and I learned and I taught myself. And I think that a lot of people, especially women, we put these obstacles in our way. Like if we don't live in a certain place or wear the certain clothes or have a certain type of partner, or if we don't have this, then we can't have our ultimate happiness and dream. And what a lot of us fail to realize is that it's completely within our grasp, because we are the only ones in control of it.
Absolutely. Yes, that perfectly said, because like I said earlier, it's all about what we think we've been taught throughout the years. But then when you start to understand and know who you are individually, know what your real purpose is in life, your purpose was not meant to be sitting in an office environment, sitting, you know, or working at a store. Your purpose is exactly where you are at today and what you're accomplished. You know, doing voiceover is incredible. What voiceovers have you done for different actors or you know, what else have you produced for other people in that arena?
I have done, I think we're at 74 audiobooks.
Oh, wow.
Over the past, I do a lot of narration, a lot of audiobooks. So, I've done about every kind of genre that you can think of.
Okay.
I really like children's books, actually. And I actually have like the dozens of different names that I do my recordings under, because each type of book, every kind of genre, I do a different name. But it was funny. I was out of a job, and, my friend was talking to me about, what are your dreams and stuff like that. And I told him I always wanted to do acting, and he found an audition for an audiobook. And he's like, audition for this. You have nothing going on. And I was like, there's no way. I don't even know what I'm doing. And she's like, you could do it. So I did it, and I got it. Wow. And when I got that, I put all of my resources, every penny that I had, every spare moment that I had in learning the craft. Buying the equipment, of putting everything in. So I've done audiobooks. I've done like phone systems, like when you call a company and,
right.
Press 1, I've done some independent video games, web commercials, that type of stuff. I'm non-union, so I can't do like the big stuff like, animation and stuff like that, because you need to be a part of the Screen Actors Guild. And that's just, for me, that was competition I didn't have the time to go up against. So I just decided, I stayed, non-union, and you can't do both. So,
okay.
But it worked out well. And, it pays decent money, and it's a fun way to be creative. And I love doing voiceover work. But also doing my YouTube channel and, creating my podcast, that has also been very fulfilling for me as well.
Right. Well, I was going to say, after talking to you obviously earlier and now, you definitely, it doesn't surprise me that you have a podcast, So what is your podcast show called?
So I have a podcast channel. So I have 3 shows. The first one is called Acceptance Without Limits. And that's where I have 2 co-hosts where we talk about just acceptance for everybody, and the struggles that people go through, whether it be being people of size. That's where a lot of our point of view comes from, because we are people of size. And we talk about discrimination and healthcare and race and gender and all of that. So Acceptance Without Limits is one that I love doing with my friends. The other one that I do is way fun for me. It's called Monkeys and Aliens.
Okay, that's an interesting name.
I know. It's an interesting name because there's a lot more in the world than just, talking about positivity. Like, I have a lot of interest. And so I have an affinity for monkeys, and I have a joke about aliens. So I decided to do a podcast with one of my best friends and a licensed therapist, where we talk about any topic from monkeys to aliens. So, we've talked about dating, we've talked about relationships, we've talked about aliens and YouTube stars and serial killers. So it's like, it's all over the map. We talk about just like whatever crazy stuff pops in our head.
Right.
and then the last podcast series is called Elevating Size. And that's where I talk to people in the plus size community who, on the size acceptance community, that are trying to change the narrative of what's out in the public, and I share their stories and how they've become leaders in their community, how they've built businesses, how they've overcome their struggles to overcome stereotypes. So those are my 3 podcasts, and that's on the Bedford podcast channel.
All right. Awesome. I love that. So, being that you're in the public eye consistently and you do a lot of speaking engagements, what if my listeners right now, I'm sure there is several women who are connecting with you right now. What would you tell them that may be going through that simple struggle of just not liking who they are? What would you say to them right now?
What I would say to them right now is the most important thing and the hardest thing for anybody to do is to sit down with yourself and be real with yourself, like really looking at the things of what is making me happy and what isn't making me happy, and figuring out who you are. I mean, that is hard for a lot of people in today's days where, we have all these distractions in our faces. It's very difficult for us to sit alone and look within and get really real without excuses, without anything, and just figuring ourselves out.
Mm-hmm.
And for women that are struggling with that, the first step, and that is the most important step to do, is to look within and then gauge, okay, well, these things are working for me and these things aren't, okay? So the things that aren't working for me, what can I do about that? I can choose one of two things. I can choose to change it, or I can choose to let them stand and to stay in that. And then regardless of what decision you make, you are then taking responsibility for the consequences of action or inaction. And that gives you power back over your life. It gives you to say, I am making all of these decisions for myself. I am empowering myself. I'm not letting anybody else give me that power because I am taking back what I already have. So that very simple step of getting in touch with you is the most important, and figuring out who you are and getting real with yourself, because you can't give excuses to yourself when you're really putting it all on the line. And that takes time, that takes practice. And it's not an easy thing to do. It's very uncomfortable for a lot of people. And I know it's an ongoing process for me in my life.
Right. Well, I think anything in change or in growth is consistent. It's always going to be ongoing process. And of course, with the things we have going on today with the pandemic and everybody having more time to be at home, and this is a great time. And we've been talking a lot about this for weeks on my shows. Everybody that's been on as a guest, we've talked about the fact that this is time for reflection. This is time to do that self-assessment, sit back and appreciate what you have available to you now, because we're always in such a rat race that we don't take the time to sit back and think about what we're doing until we're too tired to do it. And then sometimes it could be too late at that point. So, what you just said is very powerful, that, you can't keep making excuses for yourself. And if you do, taking those consequences, whether good or bad, you own it. And I love that, because a lot of people don't sit down and think about or even talk about the fact that you actually have some responsibility. It's not everybody's fault to be in the position sometimes that you're in. Yes, there are situations that may cause you to go down that spiral, but at the same time, it gets to a point where you have to decide when you're going to make that leap of change. And, no matter what it is that you're going through in life. And, I love how you have grown within yourself to be able to share your story, because as I said earlier, there are definitely many other women who are going through this currently, have been there, and we all still struggle with it. We all still struggle, like you said, with something within ourselves that we don't like. I've done it myself. And then after being, I'm a domestic abuse survivor. So when you go through that process, you've already got junk hanging on you. And then when you've been through that, you're constantly reevaluating, constantly trying to figure out, well, what's wrong with me? Why is this not working, or why is that not working, or what is it that I'm missing? There's always something that you're trying to redo and relook into yourself to understand it's not always just about you, but at the same time, you have to control that circumstance as much as you can. And then as you did, get the help that you may need to get in order to realize that you can't always think for yourself. Somebody has to open up that box, and make you come out of it and realize that, oh my gosh, she just said one word to me and it made me think, and so.
Exactly.
And that's the thing that you had to do, that, once you finally hit that rock bottom, it just, enough was enough. And I'm just so glad that you are here and that you are helping other women see the light that they need to see, and that you're continuing to be honest and reflective, that you are still constantly growing as well. I think that's the most important part of this conversation tonight.
Yeah. That's the thing about life, is that it's never ending. That growth, that evolution, that learning of yourself, that it continues forever in your life. You don't want it to stop, because that's what living is. And we get stuck in these ruts, and we get stuck in these mind frames. And when you allow yourself that ability to change and grow and learn, it's a freedom that is absolutely amazing, and I can't do without it. So I have no problem with changing and course correcting when needed, because I want my life to be as full as possible. I know what it's like to be in the darkness, and I want to make sure I live out in the light.
All right. Well, that was wonderfully said. But before we end tonight, Bex, it has been a pleasure. But could you tell everybody how they can reach out to you if they need to have you come? You need to come and speak, or they need to just want to talk to you, or subscribe to some of your YouTube channel and your podcast. Tell us how we can find you.
Absolutely. You can go to my website, Bex Bedford. That's BEX Bedford, BEDFORD.com. Right there, my front page has the links to all of my social media, but you can also just Google Bex Bedford. My Instagram, Facebook, YouTube channel, it all pops up. It's all right there. I'm pretty easy to find. There's not too many Bexes around. So just plug that in. You can also email me, bex@bexbedford.com. Anytime. I always welcome anybody's comments, or they want to share their story, or if they need help, please reach out. I'm here.
All right. Wonderful. All right, Bex, it has been, like I said, a pleasure to have you on the show tonight. It's just, a great conversation. You're very welcome. And, for those who have been listening, and for those who might have missed the beginning of the show, you can go back and listen at any time. We're on our number one platform is iHeartRadio, but we're on Spotify and we're on 9 other platforms. So there's no reason why you cannot find us. And if you get really lost, just go to www.WSBILLC.com and you can find every single link that you can pick and choose which podcast platform you want to listen to the show on. But you need to go back and hear this story, because there are so many women, and there are absolutely some men too, but we're focusing right now on the women, because we are consistently every day struggling about who we are and what we want to be. And, the whole purpose of WSBI is to provide this type of platform so that women can understand that you are not the only one. Every businesswoman that's on this show has gone through something in life, and they're sharing those struggles, they're sharing their stories, but they're also sharing how they have evolved and where they're at today. So there's no such thing as I can't. And that's what we provide here on this show. So I thank you all for listening in tonight. Like I said, if you have any questions or you would like to be a guest on this show, we are already filling up for 2021. That's what I said. I'm filling up for 2021. No spots for the rest of this year. So reach out to me. You can go to www.wsbilc.com, or you can email me at KimberlyWSBILC@gmail.com if you are interested in being a guest on this show for 2021. And again, I thank you, Bet, for being on the show tonight. And for everyone else, we'll be back next Thursday evening at 7 p.m. You have a good evening. Good night.
Good night, everyone. We will be back next Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Follow us on Spreaker, www.spreaker.com/user/WSBI. View our new WSBI website anytime at www.WSBILLC.com and on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram.